Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle. Hey, in my series Freemasonry and Satanism, this video will be a continuation of Morals and Dogma, Ancient and Accepted Rite. Look at the symbolism. You see it everywhere. Southern Jurisdiction, USA. Pyramid, the rays of the sun, the crown, the double-headed bird, and so much more. Interestingly enough, this book here, Morals and Dogma, Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite. Here's Albert Pike, the author of the book. And this book, 1871, and also entered into the Congress 1906. So we're talking 100+ years old, so I suppose there's no copyright issues, other than Masons, if they divulge the goings-on in the lodges, they faced maybe a horrible death, because when they take their oath, they swear under threat of death not to divulge the secrets or the goings-on, and to obey the master. So I did do Series 85, Part 1 through Part 4, on the 25th degree, the Night of the Brazen Serpent. So this will be 85, Part 5, with the 32nd degree, the last degree in this book, the Master of the Royal Secret. So I thought that ought to be interesting, the Master of the Royal Secret. So it's also called the Subline Prince of the Royal Secret, and it has a very interesting picture here, drawing, etching. The orb with wings, the dragon, on top of the orb with wings. The orb has pyramids in it. And then there is some kind of man with two heads, holding a compass and a square, a sun and a moon, and the Ankh with horns on top of that, with the six-pointed star. 1, 2, 3, 5 six-pointed stars. So pay attention to the symbolism. So what does all that mean? Got bugs out here. Bugs in North Carolina in the mountains. Alright, here we go. This ought to be interesting. The Master of the Royal Secret. The occult science of the ancient magi, magicians, was concealed under the shadows of the ancient mysteries. It was imperfectly revealed, or rather disfigured, by the Gnostics, those who had a religion of knowledge, I suppose. It is guessed at under the obscurities that covered the pretended crimes of the Templars, and it is found enveloped in enigmas that seem impenetrable in the rites of the highest masonry. The occult science of the ancient magicians. Magism, magicianism, was the science of Abraham, Orpheus, and Confucius and Zoroaster. It was the dogmas of this science that were engraven on the tablets of stone of Hanok, Transmagestus. Moses purified and revealed them, for that is the meaning of the word reveal. He covered them with a new veil when he made of the Holy Kabbalah the exclusive heritage of the people of Israel. There are some strange goings-on in the world right now. So it might behoove us, we the people, to see what's in this book. Remember, there are lodges everywhere, and it is from the lodges, everywhere all over the world, that they pluck people from to be in positions of power. What do you think that is? And I know they don't pick the good people, the Christians. They seek out the ones that can be controlled and turn towards the dark side, if you can believe that. So, the Holy Kabbalah, the exclusive heritage of the people of Israel, and the inviolable secret of its priest. The mysteries of Thebes, of Eleusis, preserved among the nations some symbols of it, already altered, and the mysterious key whereof was lost among the instruments of an ever-growing superstition. Jerusalem, the murderess of her prophets. Remember, it was the Jewish people who were jealous of Jesus and had Pontius Pilate, the leader of the Romans, crucify him. And Pontius Pilate said, I don't want to crucify him. I don't want that on my head. And the Jews in the crowd started chanting, let it be on our heads and on our children's heads. So I suppose you could say they cursed themselves. If God descended on earth and the Spirit of God was in Jesus and they killed Jesus, that wasn't a very small thing. Jerusalem, the murderess of her prophets, and so often prostituted to the false gods of the Syrians and Babylonians, had at length in its turn lost the holy word, when a prophet announced to the magicians by the consecrated star of initiation, come to rend asunder the worn veil of the old temple in order to give the church a new tissue of legends and symbols that still and ever conceals from the profane, that would be we uninitiated, as I've been saying in my videos, the Freemasons call we non-initiated profane. Of course, the many Jewish folks, not all Jewish folks, I would say the bad Jewish folks, who have turned towards the dark side, call us non-Jewish folks goyim or goy, which means cattle. And again, I repeat, H.G. Wells said we were animals not to be trusted, and author of The New World Conspiracy, The Time Tunnel, and many other interesting writings. H.G. Wells. Everybody knows H.G. Wells. If you don't know H.G. Wells, look up the used bookstore and get one of his books. Or look at one of my videos on his material, which I will be reposting a lot of my videos as time goes by. So we were left off there. They were calling us profane, and ever preserves to the elect the same truths. It was the remembrance of this scientific and religious absolute, of this doctrine that is summed up in a word, of this word, in fine, alternately lost and found again, that was transmitted to the elect of the ancient initiations. It was this same remembrance preserved, or perhaps profaned, in the celebrated order of the Templars that became, for all the secret associations of the Rosicrucians, of the Illuminati, and of the Hermetic Freemasons, Hermetic Freemasons, the reason of their strange rites and of their signs more or less conventional, and above all, of their mutual devotiveness of their power. So you mention Illuminati to people these days and they'll start snickering and think you're nuts. This book here, I said, was 1909 published, and I shall show you the word Illuminati is in here. Just had to pause that and make sure that you could see the word Illuminati. So it seems there is no conspiracy theory, there is conspiracy fact. The things that we're all thinking about or being warned about apparently are true. Symbolism is all the time out there. Forget what country it was yesterday, but there were some more supposed bombings by suicide bombers. Now who's going to believe that's going on over there in Turkey or something? Suicide bombers. Who would... How much money is enough money to get somebody to go blow themselves up for this political battle of the New World Order? So I don't think it's suicide bombers. Just saying. The Gnostics caused the Gothic to be prescribed by the Christians, and the official sanctuary was closed again against the high initiation. Thus the hierarchy of knowledge was compromised by the violences of upsurging ignorance, and the disorders of the sanctuary are reproduced in the state. For always, willing or unwilling, the king is sustained by the priest, and it is from the eternal sanctuary of the divine instrument that the powers of the earth, to ensure themselves durability, must receive their consecration and their force. There was a press release out recently by this one Council of Foreign Relations member, another Masonic type group, handling the United States foreign affairs, composed of these Masons, Illuminati, elitists, etc. And the press release said, "It is time for the elites to rise up against the ignorant masses." Aha! That's what they think was. It was published. You can go look it up. The Hermetic science of the early Christian ages, cultivated also by Gerber, Al-Farbus, and others of the Arabs, studied by the chiefs of the Templars, embodied in certain symbols of the higher degree of Freemasonry, may be accurately defined as the Kabbalah, in active realization, or the magic of works. So these people are aware of some kind of magic. It has 3 analogous degrees: religious, philosophical, and physical realizations. Its religious realization is the durable foundation of the true empire and the true priesthood that rule in the realm of human intellect. So they got this priesthood that rule in the human intellect. Its philosophical realization is the establishment of an absolute doctrine, known at all times as the Holy Doctrine. Remember, I've been reading that book, Secret Doctrine, by Helena Blavatsky, and I have been continuing to read it, and I will repost those videos, as well as the ones for the Brazen Serpent I read in this book, 4 2-hour videos. And the stuff I'm reading right now on the Secret Doctrine of Helena Blavatsky lately is off the chart, full of information that we should all know, be aware of. The Holy Doctrine, and that of Plutarch, in the treatise De Isles of Osiris, speaks at large but mysteriously of a hierarchical instruction to secure the uninterrupted succession of adepts among the initiates. Its physical realization is the discovery and application in the microcosm, or little world, of the creative law that incessantly peoples the great universe. The creative law that incessantly peoples the great universe. Apparently the microcosm is here on earth, and of course the macrocosm would be the heavens. Measure a corner of the creation and multiply that space in proportional progression, and the entire infinite will multiply its circles filled with universes which will pass in proportional segments between the idea and elongating branches of your compass. Now suppose that from any point whatever of the infinite above you, a hand holds another compass, or a square. The lines of the celestial triangle will necessarily meet those of the compass of science to form a mysterious Star of Solomon. So the Jewish folks, Zionists, in Israel today are working feverishly to rebuild King Solomon's temple. Part of prophecy. And King Solomon obtained his power from a six-pointed star with which he could call forth the demons. So I suspect it had some kind of magic capability of intercommunication between dimensions. And in Helena Blavatsky's, I'm learning more about that. In her book, something like there's 7 Earths, 7 spheres for every planet, called sepentary. And Earth is visible, and the other 6 are not visible. But there are beings on these spheres. It's getting more interesting the more I study this stuff. All hypotheses scientifically probable are the last gleams of the twilight of knowledge, or its last shadows. Faith begins where reason sinks exhausted. Beyond the human reason is the divine reason. To our feebleness, the great absurdity. The infinite absurd which confounds us and which we believe. For the Master, the compass of faith is above, and the square of reason, but both rest on the Holy Scriptures and combine to form the blazing star of truth. Wow. All eyes do not see alike. Even the visible creation is not. For all who look upon it in one form or one color, our brain is a book printed within and without, and the two writings are, with all men, more or less confused. The primary tradition of the single revelation has been preserved under the name Kabbalah by the priesthood of Israel. So 911, all those things going on to enable NATO, United States, the Pentagon, controlled by Israel, to overthrow all those nations, murder masses of amounts of those peoples, the Arabs, and other people. For what end? The Kabbalistic doctrine, which was also the dogma of the magicians and of Hermes, is contained in the Sefer Yesaret, the Zohar, and the Talmud. Those would be the Bibles and books of what I would call the evil Jews, the Talmud, where it says they can have sex with 3-year-old girls. My opinion. According to that doctrine, the Absolute is the being in which the Word is, the Word that is the utterance and expression of being and life. Magic is that which is. It is by itself like the mathematics, for it is the exact and absolute science of nature and its laws. So I suppose there's some secrets to nature. DNA, the air, planets, the motions, that they don't share with the rest of us, that they can control and cause things to happen. Maybe like the Mandela effect. We got CERN with Shiva out front and the 3 6s in the logo, and so much more satanic, luciferic symbols, Illuminati out there that it's off the chart, and I will be going over those. Magic is the science of the ancient magicians and the Christian religion. So I suspect the Christian Catholic Church, which probably does most of the thing it does so that it can maintain its own power, I suspect they know a lot of things they don't share with the people. Wouldn't it be something to go into the vault of the Vatican? And vaults, probably. Or the secret vaults of the Pentagon, the Smithsonian Institute, who are in cahoots with these people. People find a gigantic head the size of a refrigerator in their backyard when digging maybe a pool. Smithsonians are in there like a heartbeat. Take everything and threaten people with imprisonment or death or whatever. Do not tell anybody, like caves in the Grand Canyon. Things were found all over the world. What's the secret? All right. Magic is the science of the ancient magicians and the Christian religion, which has imposed silence on all living oracles and put an end to the prestiges of the false gods. Itself reveres those magicians who came from the east, guided by a star, to adore the Savior of the world in his cradle. So I was talking to somebody yesterday at a little restaurant outside bar, little patio, and he looked at me and he goes, "You don't really believe Jesus was real, do you?" Well, this 1909 Morals and Dogma book, like the Bible for the Freemasons, talks about guided by a star to adore the Savior of the world in his cradle. Page 841 talks about Jesus. So even the evil forces keeping the secrets from we profane people believe that Jesus was real. There's much more to this story. In Helena Blavatsky's material, they talk about it. All right. Tradition also gives these magicians the title of kings, because initiation into Magism constitutes the genuine royalty, and because the grand art of the Magi is styled by all the adepts the royal art, or the royal realm, or empire, sanctum regnum. The star which guided them is that of the same blazing, the image whereof we find in all initiations. To the alchemist, it is the sign of the quinquecento. To the magicians, the grand arcana. To the Kabbalists, the sacred pentagram. The pentagram reminds me of the Pentagon, both in the same shape. You think that's a coincidence? The machine of war here in the United States, the Pentagon. The study of this pentagram could not lead the magician to the knowledge of the new name, which was about to raise itself above all names, cause all creatures capable of adoration to bend thy knee. So whatever this entity was, wants to have all capable creatures to bend the knee. Magicians unite in one and the same science. Whatsoever philosophy can possess, that is most certain, and the religion of the ineffable, infallible, and the eternal. It perfectly and inconsistently reconciles these two terms that at first blush seem to so oppose each other: faith and reason, science and creed, authority and liberty. It supplies the human mind with an instrument of philosophical and religious certainty, exact as the mathematics and the accounting of the infallible of the mathematics themselves. Some of these words tie my tongue up. Thus, there is an absolute in the matters of the intelligence and of faith. The supreme reason has not left the gleams of the human understanding to vacillate at hazard. There is an incontestable variety. There is an infallible method of knowing this variety, and by the knowledge of it, those who accept it as a rule may give their will a sovereign power that will make them the masters of all inferior things and of all errant spirits. That is to say, will make them the arbiters and kings of the worlds. Ha! They call us profane. They want to be the kings of the worlds. Science has its nights and its dawns, because it gives the intellectual world a life which has it regulated movements and its progressive phases. It is with truths as with the luminous rays. Nothing of what is concealed is lost, but also nothing of what is discovered is absolutely new. God has been pleased to give to science, which is the reflection of his holy glory, the seal of his eternity. So they talk about spirits and they talk about God. And yet they would have so many people in the populations of the masses these days, like my friend sitting next to me last night, believing that he didn't even have a soul, there was no God. It is not the book of the philosophers, but in the religious symbolism of the ancients that we must look for the footprints of science. And rediscover the mysteries of knowledge. The princes of Egypt knew, better than we do, the laws of movement and life. They knew how to temper or intensify action by reaction, and readily foresaw the realization of these effects, the causes of which they had determined. The columns of Seth, Enoch, Solomon, Hercules have symbolized in the magician traditions this universal law of the equilibrium and the science of equilibrium, or balancing of forces, that led the initiates to that universal gravitation around the centers of life, heat and light. Thales and Pythagoras learned in the sanctuaries of Egypt that the earth revolved around the sun, but they do not attempt to make this generally known, because to do so would have been necessary to reveal one of the great secrets of the temple, that double law of attraction and radiation, or of sympathy and antipathy, of fixedness and movement, which is the principle of creation and the perpetual cause of life. It's really hot out here today. Need that breeze. I like doing videos outside. The truth was ridiculed by the Christian Latinus, as it was long after sought to be proven a falsehood by persecution by the papal poped Rome. So the philosophers reasoned, while the priest, without replying to them or even smiling at their errors, wrote in these hieroglyphics that created all dogmas and all poetry the secrets of truth. When truth comes into the world, the star of knowledge advises the magician of it. So when truth comes into the world, the star of knowledge advises the magician. And they hasten to adore the infant who creates the future. It is by means of the intelligence of the hierarchy and the practice of obedience that one obtains initiation. It is by means of intelligence of the hierarchy and the practice of obedience that one obtains initiation. If the rulers have the divine right to govern, the true initiate will cheerfully obey. The Orthodox traditions were carried by the Chada of Abraham. They reigned in Egypt, the Orthodox traditions. They reigned in Egypt at the time of Joseph, together with the knowledge of the true God. Moses carried orthodoxy out of Egypt, and the secret traditions of the Kabbalah. We find a theology entire, perfect, unique like that in Christianity, is most grand and best explained by the fathers and doctors, the whole within a consistency and harmoniousness which is not as yet given to the world to comprehend. The Zohar, which is the key to the holy books, opens also the depths and lights all the obscurities of the ancient mythologies and of the sciences originally concealed in the sanctuaries. It is true that the secret of this key must be known, to enable one to make use of it, and that for even the most penetrating intellects, not initiated in this secret, The Zohar is absolutely incomprehensible and almost illegible. So here you are getting your 32nd degree. You can't apply for or study for the 33rd degree. You have to be chosen, nominated. So this is the last degree when you get up to 32 degrees that you study for. And this is some kind of theology, religion that they have. And again, I think it might just behoove us to try to understand a little bit of it. And it might explain some of the things goings on today in the world. For example, the United States reached a point of greatness. None can deny that. When we went over to Europe in World War I and World War II, and we were there helping fight for freedom. And the United States had a great reputation. Its philosophy was basic Christianity. We were good people. And that enabled the United States' greatness. This has been said by smarter people than me. That's where I learned it. So the theory is, if they can destroy this fundamental Christianity, the 10 Commandments, don't steal, kill, and all that stuff, and take us down the path of perversion and decadence, they can destroy the U.S. So if morality and Christianity made us great, they believe decadence and perversion, selfishness, the opposite of the 10 Commandments, will destroy us. That's the plan. That's what I believe. That's what others are saying, smarter than me. Well, I watch a lot of videos, and I put 2 and 2 together. So I like to simplify things. Hence, we got all this gay agenda, bisexual agenda, transgenderism. Even Canada recently, apparently according to another video, approved of bestiality. I gotta look that up. What are they doing to we the people? We are spiritual beings. Who's trying to get our souls, as we call the old word I studied before, soul snatching? So when you leave, you go someplace. And apparently, I suppose if you're a Christian and a good person, as promised, you go towards the heaven. Another sphere, other than the earth sphere. And I suppose if you're bad, you go to another sphere. Maybe if you're really bad, you go to another sphere. It is in all these religions. And if we pay attention to the words I'm reading here, you'll see some of these things are not just Rick's, my opinion. You're going to hear some of this stuff. The secret of the occult sciences is that of nature itself. So they know some secrets to nature. Magic. The secret of generation of the angels and worlds, that of the omnipotence of God. The secret of generation of angels. Like King Solomon with his 6-pointed ring calling forth demons. People communicate with masters or see angels. But they don't want people to know about this stuff anymore. There's a grand program of concealment and ridicule out there. Like I Dream of Jeannie and Bewitched, the TV programming. Even the one, Hogan's Heroes, cracks me up. Here was Germany almost ready to win control of the whole world. Very smart people. And then, of course, after the war, they made that program, Hogan's Heroes, which totally ridicules the Germans. You think that was just a coincidence? The truth shall be known. People look into this stuff. Why did they bring all those Germans over to the United States secretly under a program called Project Paperclip and created all these small little towns and secret military bases with all their rocket science and other sciences, including mind control and other horrific activities? They brought all those Germans here in secret. They didn't want the American people to know. Ye shall be like the Elohim. Those were some kind of spiritual beings. Knowing good and evil. Had the serpent of Genesis said, and the tree of knowledge became the tree of death. So all this stuff that's in the Bible that they don't want you to believe in is, some of this stuff is being acknowledged in Morals and Dogma, the Bible for the Freemasons. For 6,000 years, the martyrs of knowledge toil and die at the foot of this tree, that it may again become the tree of life. The absolute sought for unsuccessfully by the incessant and found by the sages is the truth, the reality, and the reason of the universal equilibrium. Equilibrium is the harmony that results from the analogy of contraries. Until now, humanity has been endeavoring to stand on one foot, sometimes on one, sometimes on the other. Civilizations have risen, perished, either by anarchical insanity or despotism, or by the despotic anarchy of revolt. To organize anarchy is the problem which the revolutionists have and will eternally have to resolve. So they want to organize anarchy. And they have caused many revolutions, make no mistake about that. I'm not reading everything, just highlighted portions, which seems to be a lot out of this book. We escape from the harmonious monarchy above reason, only to fall under the irregular dictatorship of folly. Sometimes superstitions, enthusiasms, sometimes the miserable calculations of the materialist instinct have led astray the nations, and God at last urges the world on towards believing reason and reasonable beliefs. We have had prophets enough without philosophy and philosophers without religion. The blind believers and the skeptics resemble each other and are as far the one as the other from the eternal salvation. In the chaos of universal doubt and of the conflicts of reason and faith, the great men and seers, people who could see into the future, have been but infirm and morbid artists, seeking the beau idea at the risk and peril of their reason and life. Living only in the hope to be crowned, they are the first to do what Pythagoras in so touching a manner prohibits in his admirable symbols. They rend crowns and tread them underfoot. Light is the equilibrium of the shadow and lucidity. Movement is the equilibrium of inertia and activity. Authority is the equilibrium of liberty and power. Wisdom is the equilibrium in the thoughts, which are the scintillations and rays of the intellect. Virtue is the equilibrium in the affections. Beauty is harmonious proportion and forms. The beautiful lives are the accurate ones, and the magnificence of nature are the algebra of graces and splendors. Everything is just beautiful. Everything beautiful ought to be just. Moving on, page 845. There is, in fact, no nothing, no void emptiness in the universe. From the upper or outer surface of our atmosphere to that of the sun, and to those of the planets and remote stars in different directions, science has for hundreds of centuries imagined that there was simply void, empty space. Well, that would be kind of hard and impossible. How would the planets revolve around each other? And looking at the galaxy, all in a big swirl, the Milky Way galaxy, obviously it's under some gigantic controlled magnetic or something like that field. So I don't think scientists have always thought it was exactly void. There was some energetic field turning the galaxy. Comparing finite knowledge with the infinite, the philosophers know little more than the apes. In all that void, space are the infinite forces of God, acting in an infinite variety of directions, back and forth, and never for an instant inactive. and all of it active through the whole of its infinity, is the light that is the visible manifestation of God. The earth and every other planet, and the sphere that is not a center of light, carries its cone of shadow with it as it flies and flashes around in the orbit. But the darkness is no home of the universe. To illuminate the sphere on one side is to project a cone of darkness on the other. The era also is the shadow of the truth in which God illuminates the soul. So in this book it says that there's a soul. I tell people, even my friend sitting next to me yesterday evening, believed he didn't have a soul. And I believe if you don't have a soul in you, your body would just flop over. It's like having one of those supercomputer chips in a computer. You take it out and the computer won't work. You need the Intel computer. In all that void also is the mysteries and ever-active electricity and heat of the omnipresent ether. At the will of God, the invisible becomes visible. Two invisible gases, combined by the action of the force of God, comprised, become, and remain the water that fills the great basins of the seas, flows in the rivers and rivulets, leaps forth from the rocks or springs, drops upon the earth in rains, and whitens as it with snows, and bridges the Danubes with ice, Danube River, and gathers in the vast reservoirs in the earth's bosom. God manifested fills all the extensions that we foolishly call empty space in the void. Page 846. And everywhere in the universe, what we call life and movement results from a continued conflict of forces and impulses. Whenever that active antagonism ceases, the immobility and inertia, which are death, result. It says, if, says the Kabbalah, the justice of God, which is severity, or the female, alone reigned, creation of imperfect beings, such as man would from the beginning have been impossible. Creation of imperfect beings, such as man. So they're saying man is imperfect beings. Because sin being congenial with humanity, the infinite justice, measuring the sin of the infinity of the God, offended against, must have annihilated humanity at the instant of its creation. And not only humanity, but the angels, now it talks about angels here, since these also, like all created by God, and less than perfect, are sinful. So they're saying the angels are sinful too? Nothing imperfect would have been possible. If, on the other hand, the mercy or benignity of God, the male, were in no wise counteracted, sin would go unpunished, and the universe fall into a chaos of corruption. So what they're trying to say here is the evil female, if left alone to reign, humanity would be destroyed. And if God, there wasn't a female force, there would be no punishment for sin, and the world would go to chaos or corruption. So this theology, religion, of these mystery school of Babylon have this duality philosophy that they try to preach, that good and evil are necessary. Let God but repeal a single principle of law, of chemical attraction or sympathy, and the antagonistic forces of equilibrium in matter, released from constraint, would instantaneously expand all that we term matter into impalpable and invisible gases, such as water or steam is, when confined in a cylinder and subjected to an immense degree of the mysterious force of the deity, which we call heat. It is by expansion released. So, can we say that Freemasons have a religious philosophy, belief, quite strong and incessant. So they do have a religious belief, and apparently it's Luciferianism. They do control most institutions, socially, medical, education, as have gone over in previous books, which I will re-release those videos. So they have a religion, which is in my opinion, the dark side. And they control our world, and they're the ones who are trying to say there needs to be a separation of church and state. So what they really mean is they want a separation of Christianity, morality, and dignity from church and state, but not the evil religion of sacrificing people, dominating people, wars, and murder. My opinion. But of course, not all Freemasons are aware of this. And you really have to read a lot of books to get a lot of this information. But just like apparently you have to be a 30-degree Mason to be nominated or join the Shriners. And apparently if you go look up the Shriners on the internet, they have some very interesting sexual escapades. A bunch of naked fat old guys riding around on goats and other kinds of sexual things. Yep. And goats represent the devil. Baal, Baphomet, that statue with the two little children looking up at awe at the devil with his horns and everything that they want to install at that building in Oklahoma State Building, but wound up in Detroit with a grand ceremony, and the people who showed up for that grand ceremony looked like a gigantic cross between a witch's coven and a gay pride parade. Very freaky. Go look at the pictures. Don't believe me. Incessantly, the great currents and rivers of air flow and rush and roll from the equator to the frozen polar regions, and back from these to the torrent equilateral realms, necessarily incident to these great, immense, beneficial movements caused by the antagonism and equatorial heat and polar cold are the typhoons, tornadoes, and cyclones that result from conflicts between the rushing currents. And right now we are experiencing some freaky weather on Earth. Apparently in South Florida, according to a video I was watching, people are banned from going into the beach waters because of some green slime in lakes and rivers. So we're having an unusual heat, even here in the mountains in North Carolina. But as I've been posting my videos, they are spraying some chemicals and making the sky a pasty white, which makes it glow so bright that you can't look up at it. I think it's like a magnifying effect, you know, like the coils in your oven. When you turn the oven on, those red coils get hot. Heating elements get hot. So with all that heavy metals put in the sky, when the sun shines on them, they have to get heated up. And it's causing to heat up the earth below. And apparently inhibiting the rain, controlling the weather. And these people are in charge. Freemasons, Council of Foreign Relations, Illuminati, many from all these mystery schools, Bilderberger groups, Bohemian Grove, Zionism, Jesuits, Kabbalah people, witchcraft, occultism. Canada, if I can believe it or not, passing a law legalizing bestiality. I got to look that up. These and the benign trade winds result from the same great law. God is omnipotent, but effects without causes are impossible, and these effects cannot but sometimes be evil. And these effects cannot but sometimes be evil. The fire would not warm if it could not also burn the human flesh. The most virulent poisons are the most solvent remedies when given in due proportion. The evil is the shadow of good, inseparable from it. So even in this book, they're acknowledging that evil is real and needs to counteract good so that everything can exist, if you want to believe that story. The divine wisdom limits by equipoise the omnipotent of the divine will and power. The divine wisdom limits by equipoise the omnipotence of the divine will or power, and the result is beauty and harmony. The arch rests not on a single column, but springs from one on either side. So they use a lot of analogies and metaphors in their reasoning on things. Here's a little highlighted sentence. A thing is not just because God wills it, but God wills it because it is just. It is the fine dream of the greatest of poets that hell now, Hades, become useless. It is to be closed at length by the aggrandizement of heaven, that the problem of evil is to receive its final solution, and good alone, necessarily and triumphant, is to reign in eternity. So the Persian dogma taught by Ahriman and his subordinate ministers of evil were at last, by means of a Redeemer and the Mediator, to be reconciled with deity and all evil to end. But unfortunately, the philosopher forgets all the law of equilibrium and seeks to absorb the light in a splendor without shadow, and movement in an absolute repose, that which be the cessation of life. So long as there shall be visible light, there will be a shadow proportional to this light. Whatever is illuminated will cast its cone of shadow. Repose will never be happiness if it is not balanced with an analogous and contrary movement. Analogous. Analogy. Analogous. I have trouble with some words. This is the immutable law of nature, and the eternal will of the justice which is God. The same reason necessitates evil and sorrow in humanity, which renders indispensable the bitterness of the waters and seas. Here also harmony can result only from the analogy of contraries, and what is above exists by reason of what is below. Light made shadow. As the Savior is the Logos, made man. And all this reposes on the same law, the primary law of the creation, the single and absolute law of nature, that of the distinction or harmonious ponderation of the contrary forces in the universe equipose. So they're still pushing this duality, which a lot of people will talk about. Say, Rick, there's really no such thing as sin. Like Aleister Crowley said, do as thou wilt, because you're supposed to do whatever you feel like doing to make you happy. So yeah, get your machine gun, go over there to the Middle East and machine gun down a bunch of men, women, and children. It's okay. If you believe in Aleister Crowley's theology, do as thou wilt. So remembering that Albert Pike, when he wrote this book, was in communication with a master, an interdimensional being, and so was Aleister Crowley, so was Helena Blavatsky and the Secret Doctrine. Get it? Secret Doctrine. Secret Doctrine. These people swear under threat of death not to divulge this philosophical thinking of reality. The two great columns of the temple that symbolize the universe. Remember, they wanted to put down all those arches all over the United States, the temples of Baal, which I suppose they did. Sponsored by the United Nations, which is in cahoots with the New Age, the Theosophist Society, created by those who created the Lucifer magazine and the Lucifer publishing company, now called Lucas Trust. So what would these forces they were incommunicado be? Cast out angels from heaven, demonic beings? Is that what Albert Pike, Helena Blavatsky, Aleister Crowley, all these people were in communication with? So what are we to believe with this material that I'm reading? The two great columns of the temple that symbolize the universe are necessity, or the omnipotent will of God, which nothing can disobey, and liberty or free will of his creations, which nothing can disobey, and liberty or the free will of his creations. Apparently, and to our human reason antagonistic, the same reason is not incapable of comprehending how they can be in equipoise. The infinite power and wisdom could so plan the universe and the infinite succession of things as to leave man free to act, to make the free will and free action of each in an instrument to aid the effecting its general purpose. For even a man, foreseeing that another will do a certain act, and in no wise controlling or even influencing him, may use that action as an instrument to effect his own purpose. So I had an argument with a friend the other day who said to me, when I saw something derogatory, symbolic happening on TV, my friend said, "What do you care? How is this affecting you today? Why don't you just want to have joy and go enjoy your life?" I've had people tell me this too, about my concern about them murdering all the Arabs and all the other things, overthrowing nations, preparing seemingly with Jade Helm here in the United States and some other programs. Apparently you can find information on the internet that are going on now. Preparing for some kind of martial law or chaos and anarchy in the United States, riots and all that. And people tell me, "What do you care? It's not happening now." People don't want to be involved, and they think they're just going to party till the end comes. I think that's pretty insane myself. The infinite wisdom of God foresees what each will do and uses it as an instrument by the exertion of his infinite power, which yet does not control the human action so as to annihilate its freedom. The will of God is not for an instant defeated nor thwarted, and this is the divine victory, and yet he does not tempt nor constrain men to do evil, and thus his infinite glory is unimpaired. The result is stability, cohesion, and permanence in the universe, and the undivided dominion and the autocracy of the deity. And these victory, glory, stability, and dominion are the last four separate of the Kabbalah. So again, I question this material coming from some kind of interdimensional forces from another sphere or realm, reality of God's created creatures, demons or angels, cast out angels, whatever. "I am," said God to Moses, "that which is, was, and shall ever be." But the very God, in his manifested essence, conceived of not yet having created, and as alone has no name. Such was the doctrine of all the ancient sages, and it is so expressly declared in the Kabbalah, is the name of the deity manifested in a single act, that of creation and containing within himself an idea in the actuality, the whole universe to be invested with form and be material developed during the eternal succession of ages. As God never was not, so he never thought not, and the universe has not more had a beginning than the divine thought in which it is in the utterance, no more than the deity himself. The duration of the universe is but a point halfway upon the infinite line of eternity. halfway upon the infinite line of eternity. How do you be halfway in eternity? And God was not inert and uncreative during the eternity that stretches beyond that point. The archetype of the universe did never not exist in the divine mind. The Word was in the beginning with God, and was God, and the ineffable name is that which is the very essence, but of the absolute manifested as being or existence. For existence or being, said the philosophers, is limitation, and the very deity is not limited nor defined, but is all that may possibly be, besides all that is, was, and shall be. Reversing the letters of the ineffable name and dividing it becomes reversing the letters of the ineffable name and dividing it. It becomes bisexual. I kid you not, it says that here. As the word. It becomes bisexual. Well, baffle it. The devil is apparently bisexual and androgynous being. So again, this is part of this religion, and I should probably point that out here so you believe me on page 849, where my finger is, because there's some more interesting statements there. I'm going to read this again, just maybe so I can get it. Reversing the letters of the ineffable name of God and dividing it, it becomes bisexual, as the word Yiha or Jaha, and discloses the meaning of much of the obscure language of the Kabbalah. So here we have a connection between the Kabbalah and bisexual. And the highest of which columns, Jacqueline and Bose, are the symbol. So Jacqueline and Bose are big symbols for those two columns in Freemasonry. In the image of deity, we are told, God created the man, male and female created he them. And the writer, symbolizing the divine by the human, then tells us that the woman, at first contained in the man, was taken from his side. So Minerva, goddess of wisdom, was born a woman and in armor of the brain of Jove. Isis, here we go, was the sister before she was the wife of Osiris. Within the Brahm, the source of all, the very God without sex or name, was developed Maya, the mother of all that is. The Word is the first and only begotten of the Father, and the awe of which the highest mysteries were regarded has imposed silence in respect to the nature of the Holy Spirit. The Word is light, and the light of humanity. It is for the adepts to understanding the meaning of the symbols. Page 850, highlighted portions, not reading it all, but apparently about 90% of it. The square is an instrument adapted for plane surfaces only. So that's a flat surface, like a sheet of paper. And therefore appropriate to geometry, or measurement of the earth, which appears to be, and was by the ancients supposed to be, a plane, a flat surface. The compass is an instrument that has relation to the spheres and spherical surfaces, and adapted to the spherical trigonometry, or that branch of mathematics which deals with the heavens and orbits of the heavenly bodies. The square, therefore, is a natural and appropriate symbol of this earth, and the things that belong to it and are of it, or concern it. The compass is an equally natural and appropriate symbol for the heavens, square and the compass of the Freemasons, and of all celestial things and celestial natures. You see at the beginning of this reading an old Hermetic symbol copied from the Materia Prima, or Valentinius, printed at Frankfurt in 1613, with the treatise entitled Azarth, A-Z-O-T-H, Upon it you see a triangle upon a square, both of these contained in the circle. Above this, standing upon the dragon, a human body with 2 arms only, but 2 heads, one male, another female. And by the side of the male head is the sun, and by that of the female head the moon. That's that symbol we looked at the beginning of this chapter, this book. That symbol I showed you, a picture in the front of this book. You can go back and look at that. So by the female has the head of the moon, the crescent within the circle of the full moon, and the hand of the male side holds a compass, and that on the female the square. The heavens and the earth were personified as deities. So they're saying the heavens and the earth are personified as deities. Even among the Aryan ancestors of the European nations, of the Hindus, Zens, Bactrians, and Persians, of the Rig Veda Sachahacha, contains hymns addressing them as gods. They were deified also among the Phoenicians. Among the Greek Orius and Gaia, heaven and earth were sung as the most ancient of the deities of Heoside. So all throughout all these Persians, Zens, Hindus, European nations, Aryans, they think the earth and the moon are deities. I guess you could call them gods, living beings. It is the great, fertile, beautiful Mother Earth that produces with limitless profusions of benefits everything that ministers to the needs, to the comfort, and to the luxury of men. So I'm saying, is this Mother Earth entity, deity, communicating with these powers that be ruling our world to build the HARP microwave transmitters and spray chemicals in the sky, poisonous vaccines, Monsanto poisonous genetically designed foods, FEMA camps, guillotines, hollow point bullets, 350 million purchased by the government, many other federal agencies ordering bullets and weapons. So I'm just saying, is Mother Earth the deity telling all these federal governmental elitist people to arm up and be destroying the planet? Is Mother Earth the deity saying there's too many people on me? Get them off, they're like fleas. Is this what they would have us believe? From her teeming and inexhaustible bosom come the fruits, the grain, the flowers in their season. And nobody appreciates the beauty of the creation of God, Earth, than me. Growing up in Maine in the forest, going to Florida, sailing, boating, snorkeling, fishing, traveling, Yucatan and Mexico, Costa Rica, here in the mountains of North Carolina, looking behind me. I don't like these forces that are trying to destroy the earth right now, causing these drought conditions. All for some new age and new world order. Just a little my commentary thrown in here for a little amusement and FYI information. From it comes all that feeds the animals which serve men as laborers and for food. So from this Mother Earth deity comes all that feeds the animals which serve men as laborers and for food. Now let me think about that a minute here. The Zionist Talmudic Jewish folks and apparently other illuminated characters think that they have souls and are better than the rest of us. And as the Jewish people call us goyim or goy, cattle. So do they think of us as cattle, which means that we are to be laborers and for food? Just saying, if they think we're cattle, and that's what it says here. Springtime is green with abundant grass, and the trees spring from her soil. And from her teeming vitality take their wealth of green leaves. In her womb are found the useful and valuable minerals. Hers are the seas that swarm with life. Hers the rivers that furnish food and irrigation. And the mountains that send down the streams, the swells into those rivers. Hers the forests that feed the sacred fires for the sacrifices. Whoa! page 851. So Mother Earth is providing the forest to feed the sacred fires for the sacrifices that emblaze upon the domestic hearts. The earth, therefore, the great producer, was always representative as female, as the mother. Great, bounteous, bounty, beneficial Mother Earth. On the other hand, it is the light and heat of the sun in the heavens, and the rains that seem to come from them, that in the springtime make fruitful this bountiful producing earth, that restore life and warmth to her veins, chilled by winter, set running forth her streams, beget, as it were, that greenness and that abundance which she is so prolific. As their procreative and generative agents, the heavens and the sun have always been regarded as male. So the heavens and the sun are regarded as male. As the generators of fructify the earth and cause it to produce. The hermaphroditic, how do you say that? Half man, half woman? Hermaphroditic figure. It's another variation of that word, hermaphrodites. Half male, half female. Is the symbol of the double nature anciently assigned to the deity as generator and producer, as Brahm and Maya among the Aryans, Osiris, and Isis among the Egyptians. As the sun was male, so the moon was female, and Isis was both the sister and wife of Osiris. The compass, therefore, is the hermetic symbol of the creative deity for the Freemasons, and the square is the production earth or universe, productive. From the heavens come the spiritual and immortal portion of man, from the earth his material and mortal portion. All right, where was I here? Lost my place. The Hebrew Genesis says that Yahuwah formed man of the dust of the earth and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. Though the 7 planetary spheres, we're going to get into this too. It's part of the secret doctrine. Through the 7 planetary spheres, represented by the mystic ladder of the Mithric initiations. The Mithric religion is an ancient religion of the Romans, and is by that which Jacob saw in his dream, not with 3, but with 7 steps. The souls emanating from the deity, so we have souls, the souls emanating from the deity descended to be united to their human bodies. I keep saying we have souls. A lot of people don't want to believe it these days. They've been brainwashed, turned into clones and zombies, animals. But here it says it, and through those 7 spheres they must reascend, to return to their origin and home in the bosom of the deity. The compass, therefore, as the symbol of the heavens, represents the spiritual, intellectual, and moral portion of this double nature of humanity. And the square as the symbol of the earth, its material, central, and baser portion. Wondering how many more pages I gotta go here, and do I make this into 1 video or 2? I'm gonna try to make it into 1. Alright, moving on. Page 852. Truth and intelligence, said one of the ancient Indian sects of philosophers, are the eternal attributes of God, not of the individual soul, which is susceptible both of knowledge and ignorance, of pleasure and pain. Therefore God and the individual soul are distinct. And this expression of the ancient Naya philosophers in regard to truth has been handed down to us through a long succession of ages. In the lessons of Freemasonry, when we read that truth is a divine attribute and the foundation of every virtue. While embodied in matter, they said, the soul is in a state of imprisonment. Here we go. And is under the influences of evil passions. Here we go. But having by intense study arrived at the knowledge of the elements and the principles of nature, it attains unto the place of the eternal, in which state of happiness its individuality does not cease. The vitality which animates the mortal frame, the breath of the life of the Hebrew Genesis, the Hindu philosophers in general held, perishes with it. The vitality that animates the mortal frame perishes with it. But the soul is divine, an emanation of the Spirit of God, but not a portion of that Spirit. For they compared it to the heat and light sent from the sun, and to a ray of that light which neither lessens nor divides its own essence. However created or invested with separate existence, the soul, which is but the creature of the deity, cannot know the mode of its creation, nor comprehend its own individuality. It cannot ever comprehend how the being which it and the body constitute can feel pain or see or hear. It has pleased the universal Creator to set bounds to the scope of our human and finite reason, beyond which it cannot reach, and if we are capable of comprehending the mode and manner of the creation or generation of the universe of things, He has been pleased to conceal it from us by an impenetrable veil. While the words used to express the act have no other definite meaning than He caused the universe to commence to exist. It is enough for us to know what Masonry teaches, that we are not all mortal, that the soul or spirit, the intellectual and the reasoning portion of ourselves, is our very self, is not subject to decay or dissolution, but is simple and immaterial, survives the death of the body, and is capable of immortality. That it is also capable of improvement and advancement, of increase of knowledge, of the things that are divine, of becoming wiser and better, and more worthy of immortality. You can see the philosophy they're teaching here. And that to become so, and to help improve and benefit others and all our race, is the noblest ambition and highest glory that we can entertain and attain unto in this momentarily and imperfect life. Thus, we must remember, if you're not initiated, you're not a Mason, you're profane. These people aren't even allowed to tell their families the secrets. So again, I'll always say, I believe what people do, not what people say. And who are these interdimensional masters communicating to Albert Pike to write this stuff? In every human being, the divine and the human are intermingled. In every one there are the reason and the moral sense, the passions that prompt to evil, and the sensual appetites. If ye live after the flesh, ye shall die, said Paul, writing to the Christians at Rome. But if ye through the Spirit do mortify the deeds of the body, ye shall live. For as many are led by the Spirit of God, they are the sons of God. So why are they promoting all this lusting after the flesh, the New Age, rainbow, gay agenda and all that? Well, listen to this. The flesh lusted against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. He said, writing to the Christians of Galatia, And these are contrary to one of the other, so that ye cannot do these things that ye would. That which I do, and I do not willingly do, he wrote to the Romans, for what I wish to do, and that what I do not do, but that which I hate, I do. So we all wish we could be better, but we all do things we regret later on. We sin. It is no more than I do it, but sin that dwelleth in me. To will is present with me, but how to perform that which is good I find not. For I do not do the good that I desire to do, and the evil that I do not wish to do, that I do. I find then a law that when I desire to do good, evil is present within me, is present with me. For I desire in the law of God after the inward man. But as I see another law in my members, warring against the law of my mind, and bringing me into captivity to the law of sin, which is in my members, so then with the mind I myself serve the law of God, but with the flesh the law of sin. So what is the Lord's Prayer? Deliver me from evil. Lead me not into temptation, and deliver me from evil. The last two sentences of the Lord's Prayer. So it takes a little effort. But we all fall. Jesus said, he who believes in me shall be saved. So if you want to believe in magic, that's one promise I think we should all listen to and believe in. Life is a battle to fight, and this is page 853. Life is a battle, and to fight that battle heroically and well is the great purpose of every man's existence, who is worthy and fit to live at all. So there's a lot of stuff in here I believe in, but then there's some stuff in here that I find suspect. To stem the strong currents of adversity, to advance in despite of all obstacles, to snatch victory from the jealous grasp of fortune, to become a chief and a leader among men, to rise up in rank and power of eloquence, courage, and perseverance, study, energy, activity, discouraged by no reverses, impatient by no delays, deterred by no hazards, to win wealth, to subjugate men by our intellect, the very elements of our audacity, to succeed, to prosper, and to thrive. So that's a perfect example of some things that are a little suspect to me. To win wealth. Thus it is according to the general understanding that one fights well in the battle of life, even to succeed in business by that boldness which halts for no risk, and that audacity which stakes upon all hazardous chances, by the shrewdness of the closed dealer, the boldness of the unscrupulous operator, even the naiveties of the stock board, and the gold room, to crawl up into place by disreputable means, or the votes of brutal ignorance. These are deemed to be among the great successes of life. But that which is of the greatest battle, and in which truest honor, the most success are to be won, in that which our intellect and reason and moral sense, our spiritual natures, fight against our sensual appetites and evil passions, our earthly and material or animal nature. Well, that's all nice words, but if you go look on YouTube, apparently in one Masonic lodge, the police had to be called in because there was apparently some kind of sexual orgy going on. If you look on the internet, you're going to find a lot of that stuff. So again, I believe what they do, not what they say. Therein only are the true glories of the heroism to be won. There are only the successes that entitles us to triumphs. In every human life, that battle is fought, and those who win elsewhere will often suffer defeat and disastrous rout, and discomfort and shameful downfall in this encounter. Ye have heard more than one definition of Freemasonry. The truest and most significant ye have yet to hear. It is taught to be an entered apprentice, the fellow craft, and the master, and it is taught in every degree that which ye have advanced to this. It is the definition of what Freemasonry is, of what its purpose and its very essence and spirit are, and it has for every one the force and sanctity of divine law, and imposes on every one of us a solemn obligation. It is symbolized and taught to the apprentice as well as to you by the compass and by the square, upon which, as well as upon the book of your religion and the book of the law of the Scottish Freemasonry, you have taken so many obligations. As a knight you have been taught by the sword the symbols of honor and duty by which you have taken your vows. It was taught by you the balance, the symbol of equilibrium, and by the cross, the symbol of devoutness and self-sacrifice. And by all these teach and contain is taught and contained for entered apprentice, knight, and prince alike by the compass and square. Freemasonry is the subjugation of the human that is in man by the divine, the conquest of the appetites and passions by the moral sense and the reason, a continual effort, struggle, and warfare of the spiritual against the material and sensual. That victory, when it has been achieved and secured, and the conqueror may rest upon his shield and wear the well-earned laurels, is the true holy empire. To achieve this, the Mason must first attain a solid conviction, founded upon reason, that he hath within him a spiritual nature, a soul that is not to die when the body is dissolved, but is to continue to exist and to advance towards perfection through all the ages of eternity, and to see more and more clearly as it draws nearer unto God, the light of divine presence. This is the philosophy of the ancient and accepted rites teaches him, and it encourages him to persevere by helping him to believe that his free will is entirely consistent with God's omnipotence and omniscience, that he is not only infinite in power and of infinite wisdom, but of the infinite mercy and of the infinite tender pity and love for the frail and imperfect creatures that he has made. Every degree of the ancient and accepted Scottish rite, from the 1st to the 32nd, teaches by its ceremonial as well as by its instruction that the noblest purpose of life and highest duty of man are to strive incessantly and vigorously to win the mastery of everything, and that which is in him is spiritual and divine over that which is material and sensual, so that in him and also in the universe which God governs, harmony, beauty may be the result of just equilibrium. You have been taught that this in those degrees conferred to the Lodge of Perfection, which incalculate particularly the practical morality of Freemasonry, to be true under whatever temptations to be false, to be honest in all your dealings, even if great losses should be the consequence, to be charitable when selfishness would prompt you to close your hand, and deprivation of luxury or comfort must follow charitable act, to judge justly, impartially, even in your own case when baser impulses prompt you, to do an injustice in order that to may be beneficial or justified, to be tolerant when passion prompts an intolerance and persecution, to do that which is right when the wrong seems the promise larger profit. It may seem so to enrich yourself, and all these things and others when you promised in this degree, your spiritual nature is taught and encouraged to assert its rightful dominion over your appetites and passions. The philosophical degrees have taught you the value of knowledge, the excellent truth, the superiority of intellectual labor, the dignity and value of your soul, the worth of great and noble thoughts, and thus endeavor to assist you to the rise above the level of the animal appetites and passions, the pursuits of greed, and the miserable struggle of ambition, and to find purer pleasure and nobler prizes and rewards in the acquisition of knowledge, the enlargement of the intellect, and the interpretation of the sacred writings of God upon the great pages of the book of nature. Moving on, and to the chivalric degree have led you to the same path, by showing you the excellence of generosity, clemency, forgiveness, of injuries, magnanimity, contempt of danger, and paramount obligations of duty and honor. They have taught you to overcome the fear of death, to devote yourself to the great cause of the civil and religious liberty, to be the soldier of all that is just, right, and true in the midst of pestilence, to deserve your title of Knight Commander of the Temple, and neither there nor elsewhere to desert your post and flee disaster-like from the foe. In all this you assert the superiority and right of dominion of that which is spiritual and divine. No base fear of danger or death, no sordid ambition or pitiful greeds or base considerations can tempt a true Scottish knight to dishonor, and so make his intellect, his reason, his soul, and bond-slave of his appetites, of his passions, which is material, animal, selfish, and brutish in nature. Well, that all sounds nice. There can be no genuine brotherhood without mutual regard, good opinion and esteem, mutual charity, and mutual allowance for faults and failings. It is those who learn habitually to think better of each other, to look habitually for the good that is in each other, and expect, allow for, and overlook the evil, who can to be brethren one to the other in any truest sense of the word. Those who gloat over the failings of one another, who think each other to be naturally base or low, of a nature in which the evil predominates and excellence is not to be looked for, cannot even be friends, much less brethren. No one can have a right to think merely of his race unless he also thinks merely of himself. But such judgment will become impossible when he incessantly reminds himself that in every man who lives is an immortal soul, endeavoring to do that which is right and just, a ray, however small and almost inappreciable, from the great source of light and intelligence, which ever struggles upward amid all the impediments of sense and the obstructions of all the passions, that in every man this ray continually wages war against his evil passions and his unruly appetites. Amid a cloud of errors, of failure, shortcomings, he will look for the struggling soul, for that which is good in every one amid the evil, and believing that each is better than from his acts and omissions he seems to be, and that God cares for him still, and pities him, and loves him, and he will feel even the error sinner is still his brother, and still entitled to his sympathy, bound to him by indissoluble ties of fellowship. So this is how they're supposed to treat each other. If there be nothing of the divine in man, what is he, after all, but a mere intelligent animal? If there be nothing of the divine man, what is he, after all, but a mere animal? Bardison, the Syrian Christian, in his book of Laws of Countries, says of men that in the things belonging to their bodies, they maintain their nature like animals. And in the things which belong to their minds, they do that which they wish, as being free and with power, in the likeness of God. And Melton, Bishop of Sardis, in his oration to Antonius Caesar, page 858, let him, the ever-living God, be always present in thy mind. For thy mind itself is his likeness, for it too is invisible and impalpable and without form. As he exists forever, so thou, when thou shalt have put off which is visible and corruptible, shall stand before him forever, living and endowed with knowledge. As a matter far above our comprehension, in the Hebrew Genesis, the words that are used to express the origin of things are of uncertain meaning and with equal priority may be translated to by the word generated, produced, made, or created. We need not dispute nor debate whether the soul or spirit of man may be a ray of his emanated or flowed forth from the supreme intelligence, or whether the infinite power had called each into existence from nothing by a mere exertion of its will, and endowed with its immortality and with intelligence like unto the divine intelligence. For in either case it may be said that in man the divine is united to the human. Of this union, the equilateral triangle inscribed with the square is a symbol. We see the soul, Plato said, as men see the statue of Glacius, recovered from the sea wherein it had been laid for many years, which viewing it was not easy, if possible, to discern what was its original nature. Its limbs have been partly broken and partly worn, by defacement changed, by the actions of the waves and shells, weeds and pebbles adhering to it, so that it more resembled some strange monster than that which it was when it was its divine source. Even so, he said, we see the soul, deformed by innumerable things that must have done it harm or mutilated or defaced it. So what they're saying there is, when the statue of Glacius was first thrown into the ocean for whatever reason, and later retrieved, was all deformed with crustaceans and pebbles and broken parts. So you really couldn't make out how beautiful it was when it was first created, or divine. And apparently, according to the same analogy, the soul, when it was first created, was very divine and beautiful, and has been incorruptibly damaged to look like this distorted object that had laid in the ocean for years. So living this life with all this sinful and sensual behavior apparently destroys and creates ugliness in the soul. Just trying to translate here. It will again be seen in its true nature, and by degrees ascended by the mystic ladder of the spheres to its first home and place of origin. So your soul goes back to its origin. The royal secret of which you are the prince, and the royal secret is the 32nd degree, which we've been reading. If you are a true adept, his knowledge seems to you advisable, and philosophy is for you radiant with the divine beauty, is that which the Sohar terms the mystery of the balance. It is the secret of universal equilibrium. Of that equilibrium in the deity, between the infinite divine wisdom and the infinite divine power, from which result the stability of the universe, the unchangeableness of the divine law, and the principles of truth, justice, and right, which are a part of it, and the supreme obligation of the divine law upon all men as superior to all other law, and forming a part of that of all the laws of men and nations. Of that equilibrium also between the infinite divine justice and infinite divine mercy, the result of which is the infinite divine equity, and the moral harmony or beauty of the universe. By it the endurance is created, and imperfect nature in the presence of a perfect deity is made possible, and for him also, as for us, to love is better than to hate, and forgiveness is wiser than revenge or punishment. So you can't argue with some of the good words in here. Of that equilibrium between necessity and liberty, between the action of divine omnipotence and free will by men, by which vices and base actions and ungenerous thoughts and words are crimes and wrongs, justly punished by the law of cause and consequence, though nothing in the universe can happen or be done contrary to the will of God, and without which coexistence of liberty and necessity, of free will in the creature and omnipotence of the Creator, there could be no religion nor any law of right and wrong without merit or demerit, nor any justice in human punishment or penal laws. Of that equilibrium between good and evil, light and darkness in the world, which assures us that all is the work of the infinite wisdom, of the infinite love, and that there is no rebellious demon of evil or principle of darkness coexistent and in eternal controversy with God, or the principle of light and of good, by attaining to the knowledge of which equilibrium we could see through faith, see that the existence of evil, sin, suffering, and sorrow in the world is consistent with the infinite goodness as well as the infinite wisdom and of the Almighty. Wow, it's a bunch of words. But I better reread that because there was something powerfully said there. Of that equilibrium, which between God and evil, and light and darkness in the world. Equilibrium now, duality. There is no such thing as sin, they say. They say. Which assures us that all is the work of the infinite wisdom and the infinite love, and that there is no, so everything good or evil is all God's work, and there is no rebellious demon of evil or principle of darkness coexistent and in eternal controversy with God, or the principle of light. So they're saying there is no rebellious demon of evil or principle of darkness. So they said all these nice things here I've been reading. And now they're telling us there's no Satan, no devil, nothing. But contra, they're putting up that statue of Baphomet in Detroit. Wanted to do it in Oklahoma. And the arches of Baal, the demon god, the devil, they want to put 1,000 of those all over the world. The 666 and the logo of CERN, statue of Shiva. So right here on page 859, they're trying to say there is no rebellious demon of evil or principle of darkness coexistent and in eternal controversy with God, or the principle of light. By attaining to the knowledge of which equilibrium we can see through faith, see through the existence of evil, sin, suffering, and sorrow in the world, is consistent with the infinite goodness as well as the infinite wisdom of the Almighty. Sympathy and apathy, attraction and repulsion, each a force of nature, are contraries to this in the souls of men and in the universal spheres and worlds. From the action and opposition to each other result harmony in that movement which is the life of the universe and the soul alike. Alright, so I just got these last 2 pages in front of me, page 860 and 861, and I'll be done with this video. So I'll take my time on these 2 pages because we want to get to the meat of this whole thing. Apparently he's saying here there is no demon. They are not antagonistic to each other. The force that repels a planet from the sun is no more an evil force than that which attracts the planet towards the central luminary, for each is created and exerted by the deity, and the result is a harmonious movement of the obedient planets in their elliptic orbits, and the mathematical accuracy and unvarying regularity in their movements. So they're comparing men doing good and evil with the sun attracting and also being repelled to keep the planets in their orbits. Of that equilibrium between authority and individual, action which constitutes free government by settling on immutable foundations, liberty with obedience to law, equity with subjection to authority, and fraternity with subordination to the wisest and the best. So we should all be subordinate to the wisest and the best. And of that equilibrium between the active energy and the will of the present, expressed by the vote of the people and the passion, stability, and permanence of the will of the past, expressed in constitutions of government, written and unwritten, and in laws and customs gray with age and sanctified by time, as precedence and authority, which is representative by the ark resting on the two columns, Jachem and Boaz, that stand at the portals of the temple built by wisdom, on one of which masonry sets the celestial globe, symbol of the spiritual part of our composite nature, and on the other the terrestrial globe, symbol of the material part. Which possible equilibrium proves to us that our appetites and senses also are forces given unto us by God for purposes of good, not the fruits of malignancy of the devil, to be detested, mortified, and if possible rendered inert and dead, that they are given to us by the means of which we shall be strengthened and incited to great and good deeds, and are to be wisely used and not abused, to be controlled and kept within due bounds by the reason and the moral sense, to be made useful instruments and servants, and not permitted to become managers or masters, using our intellect and reason as base instruments for their gratification. And this equilibrium teaches us, above all, to reverence ourselves as immortal souls, and to have respect and charity for others, who are even such as we, partakers with us of the divine nature, lighted by a ray of divine intelligence, struggling like us towards the light, capable like us of progress upward towards perfection, and deserving to be loved and pitied, but never to be hated or despised, to be aided and encouraged in this life struggle, and not to be abandoned nor left to wander in darkness alone, still less to be trampled upon in our own efforts to ascend. From the mutual action and reaction of each of these pairs of opposites and contraries results that which with them forms the triangle. To all the ancient sages, the expressive symbol of the deity, as from Osiris and Isis, Heriol, master of light, and the creative world. All the angels on one stand, symbolically the three columns that support the lodge, itself a symbol of the universe, wisdom, power, and harmony or beauty. One of these symbols found on the tracing board of the apprentice's degree teaches this last lesson of Freemasonry. It is the right-angled triangle representing man as a union of the spiritual and material, of the divine and human. The base, measured by the number 3, the number of the triangle represents the deity and the divine. The perpendicular, measured by the number 4, the number of the square, represents the earth. The material and the human, and the hypotenuse, measured by 5, represents that nature which is produced by the union of the divine and the human, the soul and the body. The squares 9 and 16 of the base and perpendicular added together, representing 25, the square root, which is 5, the measure of the hypotenuse. And as in each triangle of perfection, a little breezy out here to finish this. 1 is 3, 3 are 1. So man is one through the double nature, and he attains the purpose of his being only when the two natures that are in him are in just equilibrium. And his life is a success only when it too is a harmony and beautiful like the great harmonies of God and the universe. Such, my brother, is the true word of the Master Mason. Such the true royal secret, which makes possible and shall at length make real the holy empire of true Masonic brotherhood. Amen. So make of that what you will. That was the 32nd degree. Had some interesting sentences in there. And thank you for watching my video. I'm going to continue to read this information about this concept of spheres and equilibrium, and Aleister Crowley's The Book of the Law. Do as thou wilt. There is no such thing as evil, as duality. And apparently that's what they're trying to convince people. And of course they have all these other gods' names I just read there on page 861. And to all the ancient sages, the expressive symbol of the deity, as from Osiris and Isis, Horai, the master of light and life in the creative world. And then also over here, forces given unto us by God for purposes of good, not the fruits of a malignancy of the devil, to be detested and mortified. So they're trying to say, I guess there is no devil. Over here, where I read before, had that sentence that there is no rebellious demon on page 856 of evil or principle of darkness coexistent with the eternal controversy with God. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you found that entertaining and informative. Rick Mariko reported.